Camille Rankine, who is the author of the forthcoming Incorrect Merciful Impulses from Copper Canyon Press. She is also the author of the chapbook Slow Dance with Tripwire, which won the Poetry Society of America's New York Chapbook Fellowship. She's a graduate of Harvard College and Columbia University, and she is the assistant director of the MFA program at Manhattanville College in New York.
Hi, I'm Camille Rankine, and I am going to talk today about the Pantoum. So the Pantoum is a poem of any length composed of 4-line stanzas. Now this stanza form, this is where it gets complicated, but not too complicated. In each stanza, the second and fourth lines of each stanza serve as the first and third lines of the next stanza. And we'll read examples of these so you can see how it all fits together. And the last line of a Pantoum is generally the same as the first line. So I really like this form because I feel like in general form can be it removes certain elements of choice for you as a poet. And that can be kind of freeing. And the Pantoum in particular, I feel that it can be a really great way of entering into an idea or a subject or telling a story because of the element of repetition and what kind of texture that gives a narrative or an idea. And, I think that can be, for certain subjects, that can really add something. And it can be a good way of really entering into an idea or a narrative. I love the musicality of the repetition and what that can offer. I love the way that a Pantoum can really tell a story, have a story unfold a little at a time. And the way that repetition can serve as a means of emphasis and also kind of a means of undoing and retelling. So we're going to look at a couple of different examples of Pantoums and see how these poems and these poets find different ways of using these forms and what those forms for each poet add to the story they're telling and what they create. So we'll start with Incident. This is a Pantoum by Natasha Trethewey. We tell the story every year, how we peered from the windows, shades drawn. Though nothing really happened, the charred grass now green again. We peered from the windows, shades drawn, at the cross trussed like a Christmas tree, the charred grass still green. Then we darkened our rooms, lit the hurricane lamps. At the cross trussed like a Christmas tree, a few men gathered, white as angels in their gowns. We darkened our rooms and lit hurricane lamps, the wicks trembling in their fonts of oil. It seemed the angels had gathered, white men in their gowns. When they were done, they left quietly. No one came. The wicks trembled all night in their fonts of oil. By morning, the flames had all dimmed. When they were done, the men left quietly. No one came. Nothing really happened. By morning, all the flames had dimmed. We tell the story every year. So I think this poem, from the first line, I can tell, to me, this is the perfect form for it. We tell the story every year. And when you tell a story over and over again, a lot of the times what happens is it changes a little bit each time. So one of the great things about the Pantoum, and the Pantoum as she's utilizing it here, is that the lines come back again. It's like a wave on the shore. And every time it returns, it changes just a little bit. Just as when you tell a story, little details might shift around. Essentially, the story is the same, but the way that it unfolds, the impression you get each time is a little bit different. And you see that in the way that she has these little moments return and the way they come back. You feel that this is a story that has been told over and over again for years. And you get that impression through the way that she uses repetition in the Pantoum and the way that she makes these tiny changes to those repeating lines. So you have that sense. And you also have the idea of a story being made and unmade, built and taken apart. And I like the way that, when you're talking about this subject, the idea of the Klan coming in and burning a cross on a family's lawn, and if you think about the narrative of Natasha Trethewey's life as a child of biracial marriage, and what that kind of impact that would have and the relevance of that and how significant an event this could be, she also is negating the power of that event and of these men by saying nothing really happened. And I think that having that line come in the beginning and the end is kind of to me that reflects the power of repetition as well, not only to build up an event and emphasize it, but also to take it apart, repeating it over and over again until it has less meaning. And also the power of storytelling in general, of owning that story, of making that narrative your narrative and not theirs. And I see all of these things happening with the pantoum and the form she's chosen and the way that she's utilizing it. And I think that's really a powerful way of taking a form like that, making it your own, and deciding how that form is going to really inform and express this subject, and how to use those elements to really make your piece come alive and say exactly what you want it to say and give it this texture and all these different layers. So I think that is to me, a beautiful example of that form. So next I want to take a look at a different poet's interpretation. This is by Natalie Diaz, and this is from her book, My Brother Was an Aztec, and this is My Brother at 3 a.m. He sat cross-legged, weeping on the steps, when Mom unlocked and opened the front door. "Oh God," he said, "oh God, he wants to kill me, Mom." When Mom unlocked and opened the front door at 3 a.m., she was in her nightgown. Dad was asleep. "He wants to kill me," he told her, looking over his shoulder. At 3 a.m., and in her nightgown, Dad asleep. "What's going on?" she asked. "Who wants to kill you?" He looked over her shoulder. "The devil does. Look at him, over there." She asked, "What are you on? Who wants to kill you?" The sky wasn't black or blue, but the green of a dying night. "The devil, look at him, over there." He pointed to the corner house. The sky wasn't black or blue, but the dying green of night. Stars had closed their eyes or sheathed their knives. My brother pointed to the corner house. His lips flickered with sores. Stars had closed their eyes or sheathed their knives. "Oh God, I can see the tail," he said. "Oh God, look." Mom winced at the sores on his lips. "It's sticking out from behind the house." "Oh God, see the tail," he said. "Look at the goddamn tail." He sat cross-legged, weeping on the front steps. Mom finally saw it, a hellish vision. My brother. "Oh God, she said. So that's a striking poem to me, and a very different example of how a poet can use the pantoum. So I think again in this use, the story is unfolding a little at a time. And to me, the repetition in the beginning has this effect of that confusion, that confusion that the mother would have coming to her door in her nightgown at 3 a.m., her husband asleep, and finding her son on her steps in this confused state and trying to draw the story out of him of what's going on, what's happening. So she uses repetition, I think, as a way of expressing that sort of confused state. And she also uses, similar to what Natasha Trethewey did, Diaz is using these small changes to draw that story out as well and to push the narrative forward. So she says, has that repetition, "What's going on? Who wants to kill you?" And then that becomes the next iteration, "What are you on? Who wants to kill you?" And so I think that she both has that backtracking, that let's get this straight, what's happening, and also in those changes, it heightens that sense of trying to gather information, trying to place ourselves, trying to figure out where we are and what's happening. And I think the way that she uses repetition also changes throughout the poem. I think at first you have the sense of trying to figure out where you are a little at a time, of that confusion. And then I think as the poem goes on, by the end of the poem, those repeated lines to me have a very different feel. I think that, she has a lot of repetition about the setting, what we're seeing. We have that sky that's not blue, the dying green of night. We have the stars and their knives. We have the visual what her brother is seeing, the devil, the tail, and that for him, the repeated images, as well as what the speaker of the poem is kind of painting for us with the knight and with the sores on his lips, and that vision that his mother is having. And I think, to me, the repetition of those different visual elements creates a sort of prison in a way. It has this feeling of inescapability. And I think that it also has a feeling of maybe this could happen again or has happened before. And, I think when you're talking about in this situation, what strikes me as a situation of maybe mental illness, drug use, these are the things that happen again and again with a family member. And so you're getting that feeling of there's no escape from this setting. This is the way that things are. This is the reality. And this is what's going to keep happening throughout the poem. I also love the way that she's used repetition in the way that she ends the poem, the way that vision shifts. At first, the terrified person is the brother saying, oh God, he's trying to kill me. And then in the end, the terror belongs to the mother, repeating that same line, seeing that the terrifying vision is her son before her. And so I think that for this, the power of that repetition is really in bringing us into the sense of despair that these people are feeling in the poem. And it's just a very different message, I think, a very different way that it's been used here from Trethewey's poem. And I love seeing that too. In each poet's mind, that form can do something very different in their hands. It can do something very different from poem to poem. You can be utilizing the freedom that form is giving you in saying, here are your options. They're limited. You need to be able to work within this and bend it to what you want it to do. And you can see that each poet here has done that. And I think that form in general, and the pantoum especially, to me, is a great way of finding a way of telling a story, of a unique way into a narrative or idea, and setting that scene through repetition and the musicality that offers.